there was a dad and daughter, a well-known guy, and he sat on the stage on a chair, and the daughter had to stand right in front of him. And then the hypnotist told him that, hypnotized him to not be able to see his daughter. He couldn't see his daughter anymore. And then he put a clock behind the daughter, or a watch or a clock or something behind the daughter. So he couldn't literally see what was behind the daughter because the daughter was there. But after he did the daughter's not there exercise with him, told him to open his eyes and tell him what the clock or the watch, what time it said. And the guy could read it and told him the time. So he changed it, and then, what about now? And he told him the new one. He couldn't see the daughter, therefore he could see the clock. Welcome to the Driving to the Rest podcast. This is Inelia.
And this is Larry. Just a quick note. If you're hearing this, you're on our free feed, which means you'll only get the first part of this conversation.
To access the rest, go drivingtotherest.com and subscribe to the Wisdom Keeper Hour.
Join us and our expert panelists for detailed insights and the after party where you're invited to join in the conversation. Head over to drivingtotherest.com and become a subscriber.
Your $8 subscription keeps this podcast ad-free and helps us keep the lights on and maybe even get a decent cup of coffee. More importantly, it connects you with a community of passionate wisdom keepers like yourself. So if you're ready to go deeper, join us at drivingtotherest.com and support the journey. And this week's podcast is about the nature of reality and your place in it.
That's a really good intro. The nature of reality and your place in it.
Yes. So I'm going to read part of the article, and then we're going to open it up a little bit, expand it a little bit. And in the second hour, we're going to go really deep with this Wisdom Keepers. Okay, here goes. Reality is defined by our own bandwidth of perception. It is also co-created by sentiency at different levels of self-awareness.
Reality is defined by our bandwidth of perception.
Yes.
Meaning?
So, yeah, we need to... This is going to be it. This is going to be the whole article. Because you can spend years studying this paragraph.
You really actually can.
You could.
So, at a basic level, reality as in our experience of reality isn't synonymous with what reality fully is. I guess that would be a good start.
Yeah, that's a good start. So in June 2025... I will be hosting a lecture event at walkwithmenow.com students. The topic for this event is the nature of reality. And in this article, I will touch upon some of the topics we will be exploring in that June event. Actually, just one of the topics will be. It's going to be a 4-day thing, so you can imagine how deep that's going to be in the June event. And if you want to attend that event, join the forum, walkwithmenow.com, and get prepared and organized. This paragraph will be the extent of my June event announcement, as it is open for the dedicated students at Walk With Me Now only. And there's a reason for that. Do you know what the reason is?
I could think of a whole slew of reasons.
The main reason is this is not a starter event.
Right. I would expect people who show up have a good grasp of the first sentence and what it means.
Yeah, but also is familiar with my work, has been studying it, understand the rules of engagements within the groups that I work with,
Right, because that makes for an event that stretches us out rather than let's just cover the basics. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with covering basics, but that's just not what this event's about.
Exactly. I do other things, cover the basics, like the classes and courses,
podcast, newsletters, emails.
Yeah, all those things. And lots of things to cover the basics.
Yep.
Anyways, back to the nature of reality. I would like to unpack my first paragraph in this article a little bit so we can further explore it on our podcast, Driving to the Rest, where you're listening to right now, as well as the Wisdom Keeper Hour and the After Party, which you can join for $8 a month. Let me repeat that paragraph again. Reality is defined by our bandwidth of perception. It is also co-created by sentiency at different levels of self-awareness. Let's start with the bandwidth of perception. During the Walk With Me Now monthly call Q&A in March, the class was remote viewing that we were looking at and studying. Several of the questions that were asked had to do with figuring out the difference between actually seeing something remotely in one's mind's eye to imagining or daydreaming something. The way I explain the difference is that if you can say you're using your perception to perceive something external to you, then it is viewing something. But if you're not using perception skills and are creating something within your mind, then it is a daydream. A lot of the skill building for remote viewing has to do with telling the difference between something that is perceived and something that is imagined.
It's kind of like, I remember using my eyes and looking at the far side of the lake. I could see the trees and the light. It looks like a little log and there might be some birds. So that would be viewing.
Yeah.
If I close my eyes, I can still see that.
That could be a memory.
That could be a memory.
Yeah.
If I close my eyes and I think about a lake in Italy, like Como or something.
You've never been to.
I haven't been there. I've seen some pictures.
Yeah.
But I can imagine what it's like.
Yeah, that's your imagination.
And I'm adding a little of Lake Crescent in there because I've been there. This lake in there. A little bit of the pictures in there. Yeah. And some of Europe, like Finland or something with fjords and things like that. So that's imagining. Yeah. If I were to remote view there, that would be using a different sense.
Yes.
And it's not an eye and it's not an imagination, but it is a sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And telling the difference between the two, that's what learning and methodologies of how to do it and having input and then actually seeing that you were accurate. All these things teach you what the difference is between the two. And then you can start sensing, yeah, actually seeing something. Or, oh no, that's just my intellectual overlay, or it's my imagination.
The remote,
analytical overlay.
Right. Yeah. The remote viewing sense is a sensory organ that senses outside our normal, regular, limited bandwidth of perception.
Yeah.
Well, at least we've been taught that it is outside of our normal, even though it's probably quite
part of it
in our normal. Yep. Okay.
All right. A lot of the skill, like I said, is between something perceived or imagined that you have to build. Also, much importance is given to something called analytical overlay, which is basically a fancy way to say that we perceive something but give it meaning or explanations. In other words, something is perceived, but we often then go ahead and give the data some meaning. The meaning we give it could be said to be our imagination trying to figure out what we saw.
Right.
It's a little bit like that elephant thing explanation. Yeah. Everybody with their eyes covered touches a different part of the elephant, and then they have to say what it is.
Yeah, so the remote viewing might be like it's gray or it's rough and textured, and the analytic overlay might be it's like a rhinoceros.
Yeah, I'm seeing a rhinoceros.
I think it's a rhinoceros, and it probably has a horn that's like hard, which could be an elephant's toenail, but no, we'll analytic overlay that as a rhino horn. Yeah, you can see how it can go sideways fast.
Our perceptions to the past or future are limited to our inner eyes, ears, etc. We cannot go back to the past or jump ahead into the future. We can only ever perceive the present. A lot of our inner power, whether mental, emotional, physical, or energetic, can be released if we move our perceptions to the present time and space.
But our experience of reality,
so that we're not
has
because
past and a potential future. Our experience right now has a past and a potential future as a part of our experience of
it has a past, but we think so.
We have an experience of it. Our experience of it is our memory of it,
that
and
can be changed, right?
Right. It can be altered. We remember the past differently.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, then.
Yes. This is an article and not a lecture. So let's move on to the second sentence of the paragraph.
Okay.
Unless you have more to say about that one, because that one is quite insanely, big.
Let's save it for the second part.
Okay.
Wisdom keepers. See if that's something that they want to expand on.
Okay.
Because that whole now thing, that starts to dig deep.
Yeah. All right. So the second part of the paragraph. It is also co-created by sentiency at different levels of self-awareness.
Co-created, yeah.
There are three aspects to this part of the nature of reality. One is that we are co-creators in it. There's not one creator. And you're but one of gazillions of co-creators. However, you are the main co-creator of your own chosen experiences. Even then, though, you need the agreement and power of the other co-creators around you to make things happen.
So should we be spending a large amount of our focus trying to convince a gazillion co-creators to believe or know the reality we want to experience? Like maybe, magic trains that go to Harry Potter land where we could fly around and have potions and things like that.
I don't quite understand the question.
Well, if our reality is co-created with a gazillion other people, should we, if we want to maneuver our reality into a different one, spend a lot of time trying to convince these gazillions to go along with our thoughts?
Here's the thing. Each game of reality, each co-creation has basic tenets, basic rules of engagement. And in this one of the rules of engagement is that there are no trains that take you to Hogwarts Magic School.
Dang it.
However, those books, all fantasy and magic books, do tap into part of our matrix reality that does contain what we might explain as magic. Like, you probably heard about alchemists.
Yes.
Right? And sorcerers. And history, naming certain sorcerers and alchemists that had much power. Have you ever heard of Rasputin?
Yeah.
Or Rasputin, depending on where you're from.
Yeah. I think a Russian mystic working with the Tsars or something.
So, yeah. And there's a very popular song, Ra Ra, from the 80s or something.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. I remember
Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen.
I did read that he was a bit wild.
There's a lot of stories around him, but there's like a leftover, I don't know what to say, it's like a leftover history about what he could or couldn't do. And also, that's from the sorcerer point of view. We've heard of people in the alternative media. We've heard about people doing black magic and doing ceremonies to, create certain things to happen and all that. So when I say that this rules of engagement doesn't include a train that take you to Hogwarts, it doesn't include the fact that there's no train and there's no Hogwarts, but there is what we might call magic, alchemy, sorcerers, and stuff like that. Not at the same level of, yeah, here's my wand and I go blunk and there's a Ferrari in front of my door. Not to that level, right? But to the level of other things, for sure. Like my own lineage in alchemy, I can create power objects, and not just alchemy, but in the magic lineage too, and the shamanic one. I can create powers, I can create artifacts, I can create potions, and
so we can co-create with this gazillion co-creators within the confines of our playing board.
Yes, that's exactly that's closer to it.
And our playing board is defined by our prearranged agreements.
Yes,
our prearranged agreements with those gazillions.
Yes.
So we want to convince those gazillions. We need to go to a different phase of reality, so to speak, and then get co-conspirators, so to say, to generate a new playing board to incarnate into?
Depends on what you want to do. If you did want a train that takes you to a magic school, then yes.
You make
would need to
playing.
Yeah, you would need to create a new playing board. But in this one, there's plenty of magic to go around, right?
So minus the train, you can still do some of the things. It's just not going to be storybook word.
Right.
Storybook mode.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a power over others magic, and there's power over yourself magic, and creative magic, destructive magic. There's all sorts of different types of magic. So, yeah, there's part of our reality in our co-created agreement. But one of the things that I thought we could look at is what you might understand as different levels of self-awareness and how that is part of the co-creation. Can you give me an example of what you understand by that?
Of different levels of self-awareness?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, there's the one that has been manipulated, let's say. I'm not saying not with our agreement, but I'm saying we allow ourselves to be manipulated into a very narrow sense where like fight or flight are the primary concerns and fear is the driver. Mm-hmm. And so we'll respond to inputs of fear, inputs of danger, and respond at a base level. And that level of awareness, like that this thing is something we need to be afraid of, and whatever those things are, those are the things we're going to respond to. That's a level of perception and awareness that's like a bit narrow. Mm-hmm. Then we might expand our awareness, our band of perception, to include things like free will choice or agreement or words like that, that say, well, fear is a god sometimes, and it's something that should be listened to, but it's probably not the boss. So am I actually need to be afraid of this thing? And then by maybe processing your fear and looking at it less fearfully, more rationally, let's say, your awareness is expanded so that you're not afraid of that piece of rope on the ground. It's a snake, because it isn't a snake, and you can see that it's not a snake. You don't need to run. Mm-hmm. So your experience of reality will shift to more like maybe what reality is in that moment instead of what you're perceiving it in that moment.
What about the co-creation of it?
Well, the co-creation of it would be like 7 people around you telling you that's a snake and you need to run. But you processed your fear and you looked at it and you say, oh, well, guys, it's a rope. I turned on this light, and with the flashlight, I've expanded my input awarenesses so I can see it's clear. Clearly, it's a rope, guys. Mm-hmm. So we will co-create you can come back and look, guys. So I will be the leader of this co-creation instead of the follower of the mass one. Okay, that could be.
That's really good. I like that. But you also need the self-awareness part, which is the co-creators of that experience would have been snakes that people might have seen in the past or in movies or whatever. So knowledge of them, that they exist. Or maybe snakes they saw earlier in the day. And also the rope. Yeah. What about the rope? Is that a part of the co-creators?
Well, the rope needs to be laid in the particular pattern and space and place so that it...
What about the rope itself?
The sentiency of the rope? Uh-huh. Well, when you tap into the sentiency of ropes, they don't oftentimes play these kind of games. It's not in their vocabulary, really.
Well, you don't know that. Have you spoken to a rope?
I've talked to lots of ropes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They don't like playing snake?
They don't play snake games. They honestly they don't even, it's not even in their vocabulary, snake games. It's like scaring people games? No. They play, I'm tight, I'm strong, I'm break, I'm going to snap. They play those games. They're snake games. Like, what are you talking about, snake game? That's my experience of ropes.
Yeah. And I really like your example because you worked with a lot of ropes.
Yeah, it's a fisherman,
Fisherman and
Coast Guard. Trained, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was my point also, in that even if we don't perceive sentiency in a different thing, just because they have lack of sentiency doesn't mean they're not co-creating our reality.
Okay.
But their level of co-creation is dependent on their sentiency. So a lot of sentiency, or a lot of beings decided to have a tiny little bit of sentiency and become a rock that makes the foundation of your house, right? That type of thing.
Yep, I'm going to just sit here for a while.
Yeah.
Along now.
Along now. There are three aspects to this part of the nature of reality. One is that there are co-creators in it. There is not one creator, and you're but one of gazillions of co-creators. However, we are the main co-creator of our own chosen experiences. Even then, though, you need the agreement and power of the co-creators around you to make things happen. Let's look at sentiency. The wiki definition of sentiency is: sentience is the ability to experience feelings and sensations. It may not necessarily imply higher cognitive functions such as awareness, reasoning, or complex thought processes. You could say that the ability to experience feelings and sensations is directly related to perception. Input goes in, and it is experienced as a feeling or sensation, which we, with our higher cognitive functions, give it a shape, meaning, reason, and have complex thoughts around it. But other things just get the data and do other things with it. Right? So that's why I like the example you gave with the rope experience, you know, because it's like, oh, I'm about to break, or I'm very strong, very tight in a knot.
I mean, there are some ropes have been beds for snakes, and you can see a snake on a rope. That's not like on purpose. It's like they're thinking soft, bed for snake.
Yeah. And one of the things about the awareness and perception is that there are people we might call sorcerers who are able to influence the perception of others.
Indeed.
Right.
Perception sorcerers.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think a little bit was touched upon by Mesmer, or what his name was, the mesmerized people, you know, and who could change. I remember
mesmerization. Yeah, people do that with their voice, hypnotic, talking or writing.
Hypnotism. So I remember seeing this documentary about a hypnotist, and this hypnotist put there was a dad and daughter, a well-known guy, and he sat on the stage on a chair, and the daughter had to stand right in front of him, and then the hypnotist told him that hypnotized him to not be able to see his daughter. He couldn't see his daughter anymore. And then he put a clock behind the daughter, or a watch or a clock or something behind the daughter. So he couldn't literally see what was behind the daughter because the daughter was there. But after he did the daughter's not there exercise with him, told him to open his eyes and tell him what the clock or the watch, what time it said. And the guy could read it and told him the time. So he changed it, and then, what about now? And he told him the new one. He couldn't see the daughter, therefore he could see the clock. Right?
Yeah.
And then that's so wild. And then he reversed it, of course, so he could see his daughter again.
I think he must be using that perception like remote view perception.
That brings that back, isn't it? Because it's like we can actually see beyond and past walls and things, but we limit ourselves so that we don't. Right? So by removing some of those limitations, and I think that the hypnotist, that's what he did. Remove the limitation of solidity of a physical body in front of the guy so he could see the clock.
Similar to the children who blindfold can read books.
Yeah, the same. Yes, exactly. That's another example. That's a very good example. Yeah. So at the end of the day, our reality is what we choose to experience. We choose to experience. Not just one person chooses to experience. This is what makes reality a co-creation. Outside the confines of plain bored, a playing board of physical experiences, we are limitless. To enter the board and have a singular life of experiences here, we limit our perceptions and our omnipotent powers of creation.
So we limit ourselves, and then when we hear about we're limiting ourselves, we kind of bristle at it. That's the normal reaction I get, or response from people. So I got to get rid of all those limits, but they keep them.
They do, yes.
99% of the time, they keep them. There's a percent who's, I mean, they're always outliers, but for the main, they keep those limits.
Yes.
And sometimes even make them bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
And stronger to prove how important I think or something.
Yes.
Or I don't know what. It's like, it's a strange reaction, really.
It is. It's a strange reaction.
What's to be gained, from this knowledge that limits are what we're using to restrict us? I mean, what do we do with this now?
Well, if we go back to the title of the article in this podcast, the nature of reality and our place in it, right? Or your place in it.
Right.
It's like how dependent, we have to understand that for anything we want to create, you need to have co-creators, an agreement. Yeah, that's one of the things. I remember once a lady said she didn't have any co-creators. She was completely independent. She created her own reality.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember the example that followed?
No, I don't.
No? Well, our co-creator here, it keeps itching. She's got itchy skin.
She's objecting cat on lap, taking dog spot, chicken roosting, crow flying around, upsetting the akbashes.
Yes.
Brad chasing the baby cat.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Ramil's being good.
Yeah. So it's like, do you remember what I responded to her, this lady? So I said, do you have running water in your house?
Yes, I remember that.
And she said, of course, yeah. Says, well, then you're not wholly independent. Because for you to open that tap or that faucet and water come out, you need thousands upon thousands of people's co-created that experience with you. She said, what do you mean? Well, somebody created the pipes, the faucet, somebody's working at the water station, wherever that might be, or whatever that's called, that pumps the water, the city water over to your house. And all those pipes that go from that location to your house.
All the things that squirt the water out, and on and off, and heat it up and cool it down or whatever, filter it.
It's all created by other people.
The solder that soldered the pipes together, or the glue that glued the pipes together, or the crimper that crimped things together. I mean, every which way. Who invented that crimper?
All of it.
And the crimps.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant invention, by the way.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't even know what a crimp is.
Well, he did a good job, or she did a good job, because our house has those things in it. Lots of those crimpy things.
Yeah. What are they?
Well, it used to be you take a piece of copper after you dug it out of the ground and melted it and made it into a tube. And you take this tube and then some metal solder. Solder is that like silver metal that melts really, really low temperature.
Yeah.
So then you put the copper in the copper, and then you solder that thing, and you make all of these pipes all through the house, and you solder all the places where the copper connects to each other.
Okay.
And now we have this plastic, which is oil, right? Oil tube instead of copper tube. And you stick this copper thing on a thing, and then the little clampy thing around it, and then you go, and then it's holds down.
That's a lot of sounds, but
that's a crimper.
Okay, crimper is
it crimps down on there. You don't need no solder, no heat, no nothing, no lead, no metals.
Okay.
But it would be nice to have channels of ceramic with the water flowing and riffles through the house.
That would be nice.
Cats can get a drink somewhere along the way, and then at the faucet, it comes out and it's alive and dancing and has music in it, and all those things would be nice too. But we haven't got to that level of co-creators yet.
Yeah.
We have
co-create
only the imagination part, the thought part, but not the
knowledge part is there. But yeah.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. That's the nice thing about this reality, is that maybe now, but now has a lot of potential futures.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So what's to be gained from this knowledge that reality is based on co-creators and our level of perception is that we can enjoy many different experiences by merely adjusting the knobs on our perception or the knobs on our co-creators.
Yeah.
Acknowledging them, paying them, being paid by them, right?
Yes.
And the other ways that you can expand or contract your perception, like if you got to think about this, like for instance, Marines, those are the fighter guys in the army.
In the army, okay.
They're not in the army, they're in the Marines. They are very specifically different.
Okay, maybe.
So Marines are just guys, and gals that came out of high school and they had their normal things. They like to sit on the couch, play video games, do all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And now somehow they have to go outside, dig a hole and sleep in it.
Okay.
In the woods where it's cold or wet or muddy and all that other stuff. And then get up in the middle of the night and do stuff too. That's a way different thing.
It's very different.
Right. They have a term for it. It's called embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck.
Right. It sucks. So what? Embrace it.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Have you ever played in the mud puddle and just said, well, it's muddy and it's wet. I'm just in. So, okay. Muddy and wet is what we are.
Yes.
You could complain about it, whine about it, snivel about it, but it's not going to change it. So just embrace it. Okay. So muddy and wet. Right. So they need to narrow their perception from what a normal human being would consider comfortable or even acceptable to a whole different level of perception in order to make that acceptable.
Yes.
Even desirable. Even a mark of your
strength,
your ability.
Yeah.
So those are a way to, you might think narrow your perception, but it is a way to narrow it because you
control your perception.
Reduce the inputs of all the other things.
Right.
Like the future, sitting on the couch, how much nicer that would be if I was just sitting on a nice warm couch with a remote. Wow. Hey, Ron. Enough.
Come on.
I don't need that kind of help. Thank you. Other things like listening to this podcast and reading this article expands your perception.
Yes.
To become aware of the things that you're doing to limit yourself, to then be conscious about which ones do I want to keep or modify a little bit to adjust maybe the game a little bit for your own enjoyment.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to be able to sleep in the mud outside, you need to know how. If you don't want to,
that's fine too.
You would be fine too doing something about it, right? Instead of wallowing in misery.
The other day, I really liked when you said, when you were a little kid and somebody said to you, do you want a roof over your head? And you're like, I don't care about a roof. Right. And now as a grown up, it's like, oh my God, my roof. I love my roof.
Nice. Right. But in context, right? Where we live, it rains a lot.
It does, yeah.
And at certain times of the year, not all the time, but certain times of the year, it rains like crazy. And when we got our house here, it had a roof made out of cedar shakes.
Yes.
And if you're not familiar with those, it's basically just pieces of cedar.
Little pieces of.
They cut little slices and then they stack them on your roof. And it lasts for a long time, but it doesn't last forever. I mean, where we live here is a cedar forest, and things that eat up cedar eventually, get to it.
Yeah.
So they used it because it was here and free, or relatively free, because they just cut a tree down and chop it up right over there, and then they put it on the roof, and you're done on the roof. Don't have to pay for nothing.
Yeah.
But after a while, it needs replaced or covered again. So they put paper over it, and then another layer of those things.
Yeah.
And then even a third time they can do that. And after a few times, it kind of like turned into a living roof in almost a sense. It's like half mush, half tree, and you don't know which part's what. So inside here we had
a lot of leaks.
You can see on the boards up here, there's like a little bit of water stains, right? So obviously we need to do our roof. But every time it would rain, we have to measure is it going to leak really bad, or do I want to spend $40,000 or $20,000 or $30,000?
Yeah.
At one point or another, the balance went. We really need to do this roof.
Yes.
I think our wood stove was going. And we have co-creators in this reality, right?
Yes.
And so we were sitting there listening to our fire go, tss, and then the roofer that we know who did the Shaman Shack's roof, he texted me, he said, hey, I don't have any work. I could give you a super excellent deal if you could just keep my crew busy.
Yeah,
like
it's middle of the winter. It's like,
middle of the winter, we don't have any jobs lined up. A close job like yours would be excellent. What do you think? And you can only have to pay me down half.
yeah.
Like,
Wow.
okay,
Yeah.
come take a look. And sure enough, he did it. And now when we lay in our bed and we're listening to the rain on the roof,
No,
it's like, I love that sound.
yes.
Before it was on the wood stove going,
around, going,
what's
okay,
Is it ruining things? Is it rotting everything?
Yeah.
Is it going to ruin the whole roof? And now it's like, I love my roof.
Yeah.
It's like the most nicest thing.
Yeah.
And when I was 7 years old, if I had to pick between one chunk of one Hershey bar and an entire roof, the Hershey bar chunk would win every time. No question. You want a roof or a piece of a Hershey bar?
I know.
I'll take the Hershey.
It's very different.
So massive.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I had a couple of quotes that I wanted to close with.
Okay.
How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're doing good. So, our reality is a physical expression of what you have inside. What do you think about that? Oh, it's a Bwiti shaman. That's an African shaman.
An African shaman said that?
Yeah.
Reality is what?
A physical expression of what you have inside.
Well, that has so many layers to look at in...
It's like, I know, what does he mean by inside? But
exactly.
if you take that and you grab it and you look and say, it has some kernels in there.
I would say reality is dictated by your limitations.
Right.
And you choose those limitations, not so much what you have inside, because actually you're the entire universe itself inside. You're omnipotent inside, and reality doesn't reflect that omnipotence. So I'd say that it's more reflective of what you chose to limit yourself with.
Okay. I thought it was a profound quote. And I thought it had its place.
It has its place in that, when you go and co-create with another person and you...
And you got to think about the purpose of the shamans too. Yeah. The shaman in this village, what's his purpose?
Yeah. But
if people are thinking evil things, maybe they have an evil reality or something.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like you go and co-create some experience with another person and inside you're feeling angry. That co-creation is going to be infused by anger. So you're going to fight with that person, right? So from that level of explanation is very accurate.
And again, put it in the place that it's from and the purpose of the individual who spoke it, and then you'll begin to grasp it clearer, right? Yeah. So this is a shaman in an African village in the middle of Uganda or something,
Yeah, he still has that explanation, but it's at different levels of awareness explanation, right?
Perfect, yeah.
Of his students.
So one of the interesting parts of that quote from that African shaman is that when we speak about reality, often enough, reality expanders are things like psychedelics and neurogenics and plant medicines and breathing exercises and what's that one? Kundalini yoga breathing stuff, like those kind of things. So one of the ibogaine newer shaman type guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was the first Western shaman of iboga. He said, iboga links you to synchronicity, and synchronicity makes things happen. So
I would say that one. Is he from Africa too, or?
No, France, I think.
I mean, the drug. The drug, honey. The drug, where is it from? It's not from France, is it?
No, the drug's from Africa. It's African root.
Yeah.
Iboga is a neurogenic, but it alters your reality of perception. In the case of this, it attempts to reset your reality perception. I can understand
why he would use those words, because if he's a Western person, synchronicity was coined, the word and the meaning of it, coined by Carl Jung, And he took it from the Asian art of the I Ching or I Ching, depending on how you pronounce it. And the I Ching is the basis of synchronicity. They don't call it synchronicity, they call it other things because it's a different language. And that's why they use the sticks or the coins, because synchronistically they will show you a timestamp of the now.
Okay.
So that's why he used that word. That makes sense, right? Because if he's a Western person, maybe studied young.
Plus his French to English.
And then makes things happen. I don't think synchronicity makes things happen. They don't. You cannot have like a rule of engagement make things happen.
Yeah.
For to make things happen, you need co-creators. So again, I think it's very limited, but it's if you could be like, it's probably taken, both of those quotes are probably taken out of context.
Not only that, they're also translated probably from French
other languages and
structure to English. So when I look at it, I think of like, I'm gonna linking you to synchronicity, because in my life experience, synchronicities can be a good guide to. It's a fun dropping of crumbs on the path to something very interesting happening.
Right.
So it kind of felt like that's what he was trying to say, but I think that it might have been jumbled in translation.
Maybe, yeah. So you can become aware of synchronicities, and there's ways to become aware of it.
Right.
Right? You're always linked to synchronicity. You're part of it.
Just not necessarily aware
of it. So you can become aware of it, and if that's what he meant.
That's what he meant by iboga, can make you become aware of your synchronicity.
Right. If that's what he meant, then yeah.
And
they're probably aware of many other things.
Yes, probably.
Probably aware of all of your lifetimes and God knows what else, you know. And not having taken it or studied it, I don't know all the things it can do, but I've heard good things about taking people out of
a present experience,
out of like traumas and addictions and things.
Right.
But we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Yeah, that's great. See you in a few seconds for the second hour of Wisdom Keepers.
Wisdom Keepers, second hour. Yeah. So that'll be an hour or so of continuing this conversation with our panel of experts, professional experts.
Yes.
So see you there in a sec.
Okay. Got it.
Love you, honey.
Love you.
Welcome, everyone, to the second half of Drive Into the Res, the Wisdom Keeper Hour. Today, we're talking about the nature of reality and your place in it. Hi, Larry and Inelia.
Hi there.
Hi. And of course, for our Wisdom Keeper Hour, we have our panelists. I'm Ashley Swale, CEO of iBenz Academy, iBenz Method Mentor, Corporate HR Leader, Mystic, and Yoga Teacher.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kara Consigli. I'm an iBenz Method Mentor, a teacher, healer, mentor, consultant, gamer, entrepreneur, and mystic.
I am Fred Guerin, aerospace engineer, pilot, dancer, healer, past life regressionist, and student of the occult.
I am Ileana Rojero, mystic, mentor, psychic meditation teacher, architect, and founder of El Método iBenz, the official channel of Inelia's work in Spanish.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. So I think we have another juicy episode. Not that, I mean, they all are, but there's a lot going on here where many of us reported in the panelists falling asleep several times, not being able to remember anything that we just read or was just said, and having to go back when listening to the first half. So we will try to keep our knowledge and not let it slip away. We'll do our best with that in our questions today, and hopefully expand further. So one of the things that came up, Inelia, in the article was you talked about the difference between daydreaming and perception and being able to distinguish the difference. And when we start meditating and you start moving into visualization practices, there's oftentimes people will say, just imagine or pretend. And so there is an element where you're like, yeah, I might be daydreaming, but I think it's working. And then before you know it, you start falling more into oh yeah, that's a real perception. That's not just a daydream. However, there's times where you're not really sure. So I'm curious if you can help us understand what would be the difference between a daydream and a perception or something we've imagined, so we can better navigate that and distinguish between the two.
That's when other people come in. Often people think that development of abilities is just themselves sitting at home. But this is one of those cases where you actually have a much better chance to advance very quickly if you have allies with you, working with you. So they set up whatever it is, and then you get the confirmation.
Join us for the rest of this conversation at driveintotheres.com.
And when you go to driveintotheres.com and you join in the rest of the show, rest of the second hour, you also get to join in the after party. 9 o'clock on Fridays, we all get together, including you.